So
are.
I'm on that other show,
Mm-hmm.
and Taylor has me drop my seat, and I dropped it too far. I look like a midget between the two of them. Yeah, it was one of those. I think I put the link on Kilroy's. I got to go back and look. That was purely talking
All right,
about
here we go.
the Gold Star Family Project.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday morning. That means those two great guys full of information you don't want to miss. A veterans show for all veterans. Welcome retired Major Andrew White and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck Wright.
Hoorah! And
Hoorah! Good morning.
We
It's
are
kinda-
here.
Go.
Yeah.
Go.
No, you.
We're
Yeah.
trying to get our groove back. As last week,
We're trying new stuff. As
Yeah.
always, breaking new grounds.
breaking
Today,
new ground.
no headsets because
It's kind of a no headset kind of day.
exactly. Now I don't have to worry about my hair
Messing
getting,
up your hair. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Let it grow out now
Absolutely.
that I'm out of the military and retired. So, anyways, we're here live in studio. I'm back from my little trip down to the great military town USA, San Antonio, your hometown.
My hometown.
Great place.
Proud graduate of Randolph High School and the first Marine Officer commissioned from the University of Texas at San Antonio. So
I'm
there
gonna
we go.
I'm
My
gonna
whole
give an
claim to fame.
hoorah on that one because pretty cool. It's been a few years since I've been down to San Antonio, and I kind of sort of forgot the nostalgia of the town and how really cool place San Antonio is to visit. So,
As Will Rogers said, it is one of the 4 unique cities in America.
hands down. What are the other 3?
Boston, New
Yeah,
Orleans,
Boston.
and San Francisco.
2 out of the 4 I've never been to. Believe it or not.
You're kidding.
No, I've
Which
never.
2?
I've never been to New Orleans, and I've never been to San Francisco. San Francisco.
That means you have never been to Stephen Ambrose's Museum of World War II.
No, it is on the list. You know what? I was
We
talking
should
to
do a show from there.
Exactly. There's 2 things. And one was sadly, I wasn't far from Fredericksburg, and I almost made it to the
Museum of the Pacific War.
and
Yes.
I really wanted to go there. Not unfortunately, it was some really good stuff going on that I did not get to go over there. But realizing how easy of a drive it is to get to where I need to.
Oh, I'm smelling another road trip.
I am totally open for that road trip, and I think we need to make that happen. JP, check the tire pressure in that RV because
Yep. Let's
will
get
be
the RV ready to go.
exactly. Well, we're here today. It's a new day in America.
It is a new day.
We
have begun a new era.
exactly. And for me, I'm just really gonna say I'm taking it with open arms. Like I said, when you get a new president, whether you agree, disagree, voted, didn't vote for them, like them, don't like them, party, whatever your issue is, the idea is we want the president to succeed because then America succeeds.
That's exactly right.
I've always believed in this as like, okay, democracy has done its business, whether you like it or don't like the results. It is, but we need to support what is out there and what we have to work with and hope for the best. 4 years from now, we have another
We are
opportunity
hoping for the best.
to do something different, maybe.
The numbers are set,
Yep.
and we'll see whether we're better than that or worse than that after 4 years.
History will tell the story.
History will share the story. We just hope it shares it honestly. That is one thing that I have seen, and this has nothing to do with the most recent presidents. But as we go back and I listen to historians, and there's an element that you cannot avoid your own prism, your own biases. But some of the things. So, for example, Truman has been considered for a long time one of the better presidents. People are starting to realize that bad things happen because of mistakes that he made, and he's sliding a little bit. I'm trying to think of a president who is rising, and I can't off the top of my head. And it was an article that I read. It was an interesting dichotomy that as time has gone on.
Well, I won't get political, but there is one president that's risen a little bit, but I won't You know, they say Jimmy Carter rose a notch or two, but I won't go into.
Jimmy Carter rose?
Well, it's a bad political reason.
Wow.
Some people say that someone may have been worse than Carter, and I won't go
I would
in.
say that's a real political bias. Oh, no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just because somebody came in and slid under you doesn't mean you rose.
He leveled out. How's that?
Leveled out at the bottom. He has a new president to put on his Christmas list.
Exactly.
Thank
Thank you.
Number one in reverse. But
I'm sure that wasn't who you were referring to as rising.
One of the things we want to do today is our show is a massive. Do we have our little sound clip ready?
Nope.
We are one. We're
Yeah,
going
little
to be
drum
one
roll.
massive knowledge bomb today, because one of the things that Andrew came up with is, in honor of inauguration, we're going to talk about some of the presidents who have served. And
Yep.
we're going to.
And we've discovered what is it, 29 out of 46?
29 out of 46 have served. Obviously, the last 3 have not. That's kind of something I don't see changing as I look at the political landscape. Kamala Harris will be the more than likely Democratic Party's nominee in 4 years, unless they big-time break from tradition. I'm not sure.
Highly unlikely.
Yeah, none of the key people on the Republican side have served. And when I say we talk about service, we're talking about uniform service, military service to the United States. And as we go through our list, there's obviously we're not going to hit every one of them, but there's a couple of them.
Very notables.
Very notable. And then there's a couple of them, it was a different era. So one of the things that I was going to mention is that during World War II, I believe it was 1 in 5 males in the country put the uniform on.
I believe that stat's correct. In fact, that was the highest percentage of our nation, minus the Civil War, which was a totally different.
Yeah, it's hard to count on both sides.
But outside of the Civil War, I believe World War II, you are correct, was the highest percentage. And I want to say that rose almost up to a little over 4%. I think it was like 4.3 of the nation.
Oh, no, it was
Even higher than that?
Oh, you're talking about the entire nation.
Yes,
20% of the male population.
Right, but
But of the entire population, that'd probably be about 10%.
Was it even that high? All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was much higher than
pretty
it's
much
ever.
50-50 guys and girls.
Right.
Unless you get down to Australia, which was why that deployment's always so popular. There are still a lot more girls than guys in Australia, and they love their Americans, and I'll leave it right there.
The land of the giant PX.
Australia?
No. Why?
America is the land of the giant
Yeah,
PX.
the land of the giant PX.
Although I will say, one of my squadron mates did, in fact, meet a girl there. In fact, let me tell 2 stories about
All right,
that. We've
tell
kind of
2
gone
stories.
off on a tangent
All
there.
righty. Us on a
So-
tangent never happened.
Never happens.
First
on our
time in the show.
So we'll go
breaking
back,
tradition.
We'll go back to World War II, and how many of us remember the miniseries, The Pacific? Mm-hmm. So there was a romantic episode. It was number 4 or 5, where there was an affair between an Australian girl and R.V. Bergen. Mm-hmm. R.V. Bergen was a resident of Dallas. Sadly, he has passed away. But the backstory to that was he brought that girl home from Australia and married her.
Really?
And she passed away 4 or 5 years before he died. I think I've got the chronology right. I had gotten a chance to know RV. He wrote the book Islands of the Dam. Now, what's interesting is they did not use the book Islands of the Dam. They used Strong Men Armed and Helmet for My Pillow as the basis of the miniseries, which was done after the Band of Brothers, which is still to me, the number one, the GOAT of all time. Movie, series, whatever you want to call it.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
And Pacific was definitely a 1A or 1B, if you will, in that sense.
And if you watch the Pacific, you saw the difference between the 2 theaters of operation. Because the truth about the Pacific War is it was really ugly. War is always ugly. This took ugly to a whole new level.
No question about it.
But the interesting thing is the character R.V. Bergen was actually a mortarman assigned to those units. He knew the guys who wrote those books. They didn't collaborate on them. But he wrote the book, Island of the Damned. So I am very proud to say I have a copy of it in my small but growing autographed book collection.
Chuck, I got to stop you there. Every time we do this show, you always tell me about a small library. I'd say your library has definitely gone to at least medium level because you're always telling us about these new books and quite honestly, jealous of some of the books that you have in there. So we cannot call it small anymore.
The Library of Congress comes to him.
Yeah, exactly.
I only wish, if you've ever been there, that is the coolest library in the world. I love those, architectural digest style pictures of great libraries.
Chuck Wright's house is in there.
No, mine is. I've got the cheap. They are wood, but they're the lean against the wall bookshelves, and they line 1.5 walls of my office, and we turned the media room into my office in my kind of guy room. Not quite as cool as my brother's, which is actually a combination bar, game room, library, and TV room with a huge fireplace in it. Not quite that cool yet.
We're working on it.
The interesting part of the story, if you watch it, is there's a love interest, but not only did he bring that young Australian lady home and make a honest woman out of her, but one of my squadron mates did too. And Dave, shout out to you if you're listening. This show does go out over a couple of my Marine Facebook pages, my old squadron page, but he did the same thing. And it was funny because my second cruise, that was what I did. I was kind of I was called the S5 officer. Mm-hmm. So I was I did the S5. So S1 is admin, S2 is intelligence, S3 is operations, and S4 is logistics. So anything that didn't fit in one of those got thrown over to the S5.
But don't forget what S6,
huh?
or Class 6 is where most people...
Class 6. Now, you see, this is where, Andrew, you're going to have to explain what Class 6 is. But
the
this
most
is my
important
partner
resource in the military. And that is, anyone in the military knows Class 6 is the liquor store and the booze.
The booze.
Booze
so
and
anyway,
cigarettes.
We're off on a tangent. Let's try to bring it back. And we're going to drop our first knowledge bomb so we can get our video. Wake up our producer.
Yep.
Okay, we got to have a little more. JP shortened it too much. You got to hear that bomb coming down and then blowing up.
There we go.
So, before we jump into presidents, let's jump into footballs.
All right. One of the things that we were talking about, as we all know, the president carries around him, and everyone's heard the term, the football. Football is in the nuclear era, because obviously not every president has had a football, because prior to FDR/Truman, there was no need for a football.
Well, actually, it would have been Truman. FDR didn't have a nuke.
Well, no, he did. Remember, Truman did not know about the
working nuke.
Truman did not even know the Manhattan Project existed.
Until he was president.
To his president, it was actually in service under FDR, but became active. So, I'm not sure when they did the football, but anyway, we'll give Truman till we can verify.
Truman can be first.
Sure. We'll give Truman, he's a good guy,
I was going to say, I don't think it was Ike until Ike came along, and we'll talk about Ike.
Yeah, we'll talk about Ike.
So I thought we were talking about the Army-Navy game again?
Army-Navy game?
Football, right?
Football. No, we're talking about...
So tell the guys what the football is.
Well, I'm about to. The football is a 45-pound... Well, what we know of the football, because obviously there's a lot of super secret squirrels that we'll never know about. I always saw up until Wednesday of this week that the football was the nuclear launch codes. It is not. It is a device used to transmit the nuclear launch codes to the need-to-know people. It is a 45-pound aluminum-cased satchel wrapped in black leather. And that's about all that you can learn about it.
Did you tell me Verizon had the service contract?
I think it was either them or T-Mobile. I'm not sure which one. They got that 5G network going.
Get that 5G network going.
Which would actually be really cool to, have that contract, I'm sure. But anyways, we diverse. The nuclear codes are actually kept in an a laminated / plastic case on the president's person at all times. And there's been a few times where those codes have been misplaced. And this is what inspired me as I was listening to them talking about the handoff. This is the first time in the nuclear era that a sitting president did not physically transfer the codes to the incoming president because President Trump decided to go down to Florida and would not be at the inauguration to hand over the codes to now President Biden. So there were 2 nuclear footballs in play at one time, just for a brief moment, because President Trump's codes were deactivated at the stroke of noon on Wednesday, and President Biden's codes were activated. But those codes, when they were lost, we learned when President Reagan was shot and rushed over to the hospital. During the triage, when they were examining him, looking, removing clothes and do all this stuff, there's always a Secret Service agent in the room for obvious reasons. One of the reasons is to make sure they take possession of the nuclear codes. God forbid anything were to occur to the president.
That one's in black. I really like it better in brown.
Maybe we can get some stitching on there, A bedazzler would be nice.
There we go. Yeah. You got to class this up a little bit.
Exactly. So when Reagan was being triaged, somebody accidentally grabbed his clothes and apparently his shoe. Out of the way, yeah, and they put in, the dirty bio, well, we all have been to the hospital, Well, they could not find his codes for a period of time. The story does not say how long, but the codes were ultimately found in his shoe. Some Secret Service agent was obviously seeing his career flash in front of his eyes.
Can only imagine the panic in their hearts as they're going, we can't find the nuclear codes.
That would be a very scary moment.
Now, the irony is even if somebody had them, they couldn't do anything with them without the football.
Exactly. But nonetheless, we all know what it must have been like to be that agent. Like, do you want to call the boss to tell him that we lost the code, or do I? It's like flipping a coin bet that you want to lose.
Oh, man.
Anyways, but it's also been lost on a couple other occasions. President Clinton, during a period of time, the story does not say why, how, or where. We can speculate, but
we love football here. We have no idea why that picture is up, but that's okay.
President Clinton did misplace his nuclear codes at some point in time. We, again, don't know where, how, or why.
Okay,
but
we're going to try to keep the show PG-13, so we're not going to speculate on where Slick Willie was at that point in time.
Or who may have had it at the time. We can contact Miss Lewinsky and see if she knew.
I'm not going down that path. I've got some comments to make, but
anyways,
I'm not going down that
another time where it was sadly similar to Reagan is when Kennedy was shot in Dallas.
Yes.
The codes were temporarily misplaced during the whole chaos of the assassination. The codes at that point were temporarily misplaced, ultimately found and given to Vice President / then shortly after President Johnson on Air Force One, which brings me up to another interesting thing. We've all seen the movies. We know Air Force One is only Air Force One when the president is aboard. Prior to that, I'll have to re-look it up. It's got like some long
VC-25.
There you go. I could not remember. It was the code.
I think that's VC-25. They have a separate, and that code is used to talk to air traffic control.
Yep. And there's always 2 Air Force Ones in the air.
Yep.
At any time. I believe there are 3 Air Force One aircraft. Would that be the right term?
They're aircraft.
I believe there are 3 of them.
They're Boeing 747s now,
in service.
And there are 3 of them, so that if airplanes need maintenance, so if one is down, there's always 2. There's always a backup flying behind it. I know that the media went a little wild when you saw V-22s flying around D.C. this week, but the reality was, if you look at them, They are painted in the traditional colors of the Marine one,
Yep.
from HMX1, and I have gotten a tour of that facility, and it's quite cool. But they are...
Now, are they out of Andrews as well? Or?
No, they're out of Quantico.
Okay. I didn't know. I mean, to me, logically, you would think they'd all be in one, especially today, everything's going joint.
Yep.
You know, you would think they'd all be at Andrews there.
Pretty much. So, quick explanation about that. You are correct. Andrews has gotten very busy, and Quantico's airfield, because Quantico used to be the Marine Corps test facility for its aircraft. Now all of that is done at NAX Pax River, which is in Maryland. Basically, the HMX-1 now has the entire airfield pretty much to itself.
I would imagine.
So that's makes for real good security. There's certainly close enough flying time, especially with the new HMX-1 presidential helicopter. The president does not travel aboard their V-22s. Hopefully one day he will, because they have become very safe aircraft. But they travel from Quantico because they're Marines and it's a Marine base and all that. I'm sure there's some inter-service rivalry there.
You know that exists out there. But a couple things I found interesting. Before we go into this list, back to both Marine One and Air Force One. I was in D.C. a few years ago, and how often they practice the landing. They have is probably not much bigger than a trash can lid. There's 3 red discs that are placed on the, is the South Lawn? I think that's
I
where,
believe that's right.
I think it's the South Lawn, where they have to perfectly land on those discs every time. And they're practicing that day, night, no matter what the wind condition, everything.
So to explain what he's talking about, there are 3 wheels. Actually, there are a pair of wheels on each of the 3 stations that are in a triangle. And you place those wheels directly on those pads, and that's not something difficult to do for a helicopter pilot. We used to land with pretty much that precision when we were flying onto the boat, and the challenge there is the boat is moving not only through the water, but it's moving up and down and left and right, not dramatically, but enough to make it more of a challenge. Their thing is that they have to do that on the first shot. You don't get to hover and then set down. You're supposed to come in and land perfectly. I know several former HMX-1 pilots. They are generally considered the creme de la creme of
I would imagine, just
flyers.
like the pilot of Air Force One, I'm sure he's got, or she has, a spotless flight record.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely
spotless flight record to have that type of responsibility.
No, absolutely. One of the pinnacle positions in each of the services. In fact, we are blessed in Frisco, Texas, with a friend of mine, a gentleman named Dick Peasley, who was the former CO of HMX-1.
Really? Yeah. Where do you go from? I mean, I'm just thinking to myself, if you're a Air Force One pilot or Marine One pilot, where do you really go at? I mean, you think about it, you are responsible. I mean, Air Force One is known as the Flying White House. You know, I mean, that's one heck of a responsible job. Right there. I can't even imagine what kind of command would equal that type of...
It kind of depends on the individual. Dick wound up retiring from the Marine Corps.
Which I would imagine many would.
Many will, unless you're picked up for general.
Certainly opens up the door for general, that recommendation.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I don't know. That would be kind of an interesting study to see what
we
they've
get him
done.
on the...
I flew with a gentleman who was slated to come in to be the XO of HMX-1. And generally what happens, you come in and you serve whatever the tour is, a year and a half as XO, and then you take over as CO. He was slated to do that. Unfortunately, there was a hiccup. I don't know if my friend out in John Buckingham out in Hawaii is listening at 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe he'll listen later, but he tells the story, and unfortunately, Dinger was his call sign, and I'll leave it there. Just an outstanding individual, had been an HMX-1 pilot that I flew with, and didn't get that opportunity, and I know that it was a little bit heartbroken
Well, I'm sure
about
the
it.
competition for that is
Oh my
gotta
gosh,
be
just
fierce.
through the charge.
For me,
Through
if
the
I didn't get
charge.
selected for something like that, I would totally understand, because you're the best of the best, and then there's the best of the best of the best.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Hey, we promised when we jumped on, and I understand we are going to have the author of this month's Book of the Month. Supposedly is going to show up in studio. So, but before he gets here, we wanted to do a knowledge bomb. We wanted to talk about this inauguration week. And as I said that, again, I'm going to backtrack just a minute.
He's here. Brian's here. I'm just letting
here?
him know.
Okay. We will go through our presidents quickly.
Right.
We'll make Brian sit there and be quiet for a minute, but then we'll talk about his book and the Book of the Month. We missed a shout-out. So not this past week, but the week before, we hit the 30th anniversary of Desert Storm.
Yes, we did.
So, to running for re-election, City Councilman John Keating getting a little bit of free political publicity, and all of my other friends who served in Desert Storm. A shout-out to that 30th anniversary. It doesn't seem so long ago, at least not to me. But it was last century, so for a lot of our listeners, now ancient history. It's a little bit sad to describe anything that I was living during the time of as being ancient, but what can you say?
Well, we're also coming up. Well, actually, before we even go there, on a sad note, but we have to remember, is unfortunately last week we lost a good friend of ours, a good friend of all veterans, especially here in the Texas area, John Lunkowitz.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot.
I do. We have to make sure we recognize him, and our thoughts out to his wife Lisa.
Wonderful lady, absolutely
unbelievable.
Wonderful lady.
Classic. John, for those of y'all who may not know John, he was definitely a soldier's. So
he was also the head of the state's Purple Heart Society,
and served on the national as well.
Oh, didn't know that.
He was. I can't even begin to express what a champion of veteran causes he was.
The last time I saw him was when we were at the Frisco City Council. The Frisco Veteran Advisory Committee had put together and created and turned Frisco into a Purple Heart city.
And his goal, and I'm not sure if they reached every county in every city, but was to have Texas become the first purple state in America, with having every city going purple.
I think it's every county.
Every county was
It'd
a county.
be almost impossible to get every city.
But I think it was a county. And
every county.
Pretty sure we accomplished that under him.
Did we?
Yes.
Have to research that.
He was a champion. He will definitely be missed. I remember several personal. In fact, I was at his and Lisa's wedding.
Oh, there we go.
And
good friend.
Great friend to soldiers. Great friend to service members. Just a great human being.
John, absent companion, sir.
Yeah. So
Lisa,
we salute
our
you.
thoughts and prayers.
And another, unfortunately, sad note to remember, we're coming up on the anniversary. On January 28th, 1986, we lost 7 great Americans with the Space Shuttle Challenger. Coming up on that anniversary. I remember that day extraordinarily well. It was a snow day up in Connecticut. We were all home watching on TV, and man, I remember when you saw that for the first time, you're just like, did I just see what I mean, is it supposed to happen that way?
Everybody, keep in mind the Challenger launches were broadcast. They were quite big news at the time. So unfortunately, everybody saw those 7 astronauts lose their lives. That was this just massive explosion.
Yep.
Okay, let's stop bringing everybody down.
And now let's bring it. Well, depending on your point of view of presidents, let's bring them up a little bit.
Yeah, let's pick them up a little bit.
All right.
So I'm going to let you kick it off.
Well,
with number 1.
With number 1, and
actually, you know what I found out?
What's that?
He's not number 1.
You're right. Technically, he was number 6 in line because they served only 1 year. He's the first president under the ratified Constitution.
That is correct.
There were 6 previous men who held the title of president until they were under
the Articles of Confederation.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So,
all right. So the first president,
he's still number 1 in our hearts and our minds.
Absolutely. In fact, another great place for road trip. His Mount Vernon estate, unreal. And I'm going to give a big Texas shout out to that. The gates to the entranceway were donated and made from Texas.
Really?
Yes, I was there 2 years ago and saw that. And there's a big thing tribute to Texas on there.
They still make whiskey there, too.
Yes.
Do they still make whiskey? Can one buy that whiskey?
Yes, you can.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, you can.
All right.
So
I'll
we're going
have
to
add that
talk
to my
with
whiskey
number
collection.
1, Commander-in-Chief who served in the military, George. George Washington fought in the French and Indian War and obviously the American Revolution. Talk about setting the bar high.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to beat.
It was
Washington.
funny. In an online discussion that I was part of, there are a lot of people who say he was not tactically a very good general. And I'm not sure I buy that. And some of that is based on he did, in fact, during the French and Indian Wars, kind of make a colossal goof. And that happens, unfortunately. For some officers, it ends their careers. For others, they're able to overcome it. But one of the things they were talking about is they said he had never won a battle. And that was interesting. It's also not entirely true. And the one meme I should have thrown up there, it's one of the funniest that I always put up around Christmas Eve. Americans, we'll come at you on Christmas Eve and we'll kill you in your beds. We know we did it at Valley Forge.
Yep. And it's true. His win-loss record up until then was not Hall of Fame material, let's put it that way.
Well, interesting you would use the football reference. Yep. He was basically a small college team going up against the best of the NFL.
And I was about to go there. Yeah. Was probably a lot to do with his win-loss record if you were to just go there.
Just measure the battles. And he did lose, in fact, a lot of battles. But what he did tactically was fight the first guerrilla war as we know it.
And it's funny you mentioned that. There was actually Robert's Rangers. We all know about the Rangers. His only regret, he said, was he never got to command the battlefield alongside George Washington.
Oh, my gosh. How cool.
He said, out of all of his accomplishments.
Very quickly explain who Robert's Rangers are.
Robert's Rangers are, we've all know about the U.S. Army Rangers. Robert's Rangers was from New Hampshire. He was, if you talk to most Rangers out there, he is the father of the modern day Rangers. The Green Mountain Men, we've all heard about them, their legendary exploits. He started and used guerrilla warfare tactics, much like what the Indians used at the time, and employed that. And he had several victories over overwhelming odds of the British invasion forces because he used the British military fought what was then considered professional warfare by lining up on a straight line, taking aim, firing, and then letting the other side volley. That's how they fought wars back then. Part of the reason why is because weaponry was so inaccurate that you could be as far away as Chuck and I are, aim straight him and miss him. And that was not unheard of.
Because they were using muskets. Now, one of the things that the Americans did that was different is that they used, and they called them Pennsylvania rifles. They had come over from Germany. Mm-hmm. They were the first rifles to have, and they were called rifles because the barrels were rifled. So the point was, instead of just blowing the ball out of the barrel, and the barrel was smoothbore, it was rifled so the projectile would spin. It was much more accurate, much more powerful with the same powder charge, and carried a much greater distance.
And here's I'm going to use a sports
And
stat.
accuracy.
Do you know why?
Accuracy was
do you know
way,
why
way
they
higher.
went to the rifling? What inspired them?
I have no idea. I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Golf. Because the original golf balls were smooth. And when they got notches
Interesting.
in
They
the
got
golf
little
balls,
dimples in them, yeah.
they put in dimples now because the hierarchy would never play with a damaged, scuffed up golf ball because golf was a sport of, elite class.
Aristocrats.
So
Gentlemen.
as soon as they
Look
hit
at
the
what
balls,
we've done to it.
exactly. As soon as they hit golf balls and they'd get scuffed up, they'd like, nope, I don't want it. And they'd give it to their caddies. Say, here, go play with that ball. Well, caddies would play with that ball and found those balls went farther and straighter. And someone discovered that, scuffed up golf balls are better to use. Well, that inspired rifling over in Europe. I don't remember the name of the gentleman. He was the Lord's armor for the king.
Interesting.
Something Burke, I think, was the name.
No clue.
Ezekiel
You obviously
Burke.
didn't do your homework.
It was just one of those Cliff Clavin worthless piece of information, and that's how. Cause now golf balls have dimples. Same reason why
There we
rifles.
go.
So, golf contributed to modern warfare.
So while Washington's army was very much under strength and did not have the manpower to stand toe-to-toe like the English did, Washington's techniques wound up changing the face of warfare pretty much forever. Although they would still line up in the Civil War, they would line up, but by then technology had gotten to the point when you did that, you took some serious losses. So,
Our guest is here.
is he back there?
Yeah, Brian. Sorry. Hey,
I
hey,
guess I have to navigate him through the maze.
Got
yeah.
to navigate him through the maze. There we
We'll,
go.
we'll keep on running. So we got Washington. Let's move on. We got number 2.
Okay, we'll get the pictures up in just a second as our producer has abandoned us.
He has shifted fire.
He has shifted fire. And we're going to talk about, there we go,
Look at that.
Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson would be our 7th president. He was an interesting man. I have a strong personal tie to Andrew Jackson, as a matter of fact. He first gained fame. He was appointed to head the Tennessee militia. Mm-hmm. Very involved in the Indian Wars. The first biggest battle was the Battle of Horseshoe Bend,
Right.
where he gained the nickname that would carry him forever, Old Hickory. Where my tie came to him is that my great-grandfather times 3 or 4, I think it's 3 or 4.
Right.
Hey, there he is. We're welcoming Brian Fleming to the camera.
You're just
and the
on.
studio. Huh?
You're just on. I don't have them on right now.
Oh,
Not
okay.
yet.
Well, you
It's
can't
the
see him yet.
magic of
We're
magic
saving
of
him.
live
Yeah.
video.
It'll be a
I
big
have no-
surprise.
I have no idea what's going out to everybody, but we'll talk to Brian here in just a second. But Andrew Jackson would become most famous for the Battle of New Orleans. Not to mention he's on our $20 bill now. As our 7th president, he was a bit of a rogue, if you will, as a president.
That would be an understatement.
There he is, astride his trusty steed. But he would soundly defeat the British at the Battle of New Orleans. Tactically, it was actually a very interesting battle. But the most interesting part about the battle is the Treaty of Ghent had already been signed, and the war had been over for a month. Of course, back then, news traveled by sailing ship.
They didn't have social media.
They didn't have social media, and nobody knew the battle was over. So not unlike his predecessor, George Washington, who may have lost every battle he fought but one, where he soundly kicked the British's butt at Yorktown, the defeat at New Orleans was quite humiliating for the British because up until then, the War of 1812 had not been going well for the Americans.
Had not.
Not been going well at all, although we did manage to stop them at Fort McKinley. So after the War of 1812 and before he became president, he would also fight in the Black Hawk War, and you'll notice the next couple of presidents gained a lot of war experience, military experience, fighting against the Indians.
Yep.
But he would also be responsible for the first victory in the First Seminole War, which wound up getting Florida annexed to the United States. And we would wind up being a second Seminole War. And I'll throw it over to you to talk about Zachary Taylor.
Zachary Taylor, a career military officer. Very interesting story. When he was really the reason why the battle cry for his campaign when he became president was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Tyler was really the main ticket on there. He was so popular that they had to put him on as vice president ticket for this because of his military record. He served
Quite the hero in the Mexican-American War.
Yes, he was. He was the last president born before the adoption of the Constitution, so getting a little long in the tooth, Cool little fact. Chuck, love that. Fought in the War of 1812, the Black Hawk War, the Second War, and Old Rough and Ready. He was equivalent of what you'd want to call, today's modern just mean old general. Just he took it. He'd been like a Patton or maybe even Mad Dog himself. That type of general where he led from the front.
Mad Dog is a reference to General James Mattis. He is not happy.
I know, he never liked that
He doesn't
nickname.
like Mad Dog. He prefers Chaos, which was his call sign in Desert Shield.
Great general leader. He led America well. He was reason why we had so much success, in something. It's because of people like him. He understood military tactics. He was a born military leader. Not so much sure as a president, but when it came to leading men, inspiring men, fighting battles, that's the guy you wanted on the front line.
Indeed. So we're going to try to get over to Brian, but I wanted to jump into our next president on the list. Actually, we're going to skip one. We're going to come back and talk about these next week. We're going to try not to get off on so many tangents. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about Teddy Roosevelt, as I was corrected, he did not lead the charge up San Juan Hill. He led the charge up Kettle Hill.
That is correct.
And he would post-life, there's an expression for that.
Yep.
I forget what it is. Not really important. He would earn the Medal of Honor for his heroics because he actually led from the front astride a horse. Everybody else had to run up the hill. There were a few people with horses. There's a whole military history we can go into about that. Our rifles were definitely outmatched by the Spanish, who were using German Mausers, but the story here, the knowledge bomb we wanted to drop, is that he would earn the Medal of Honor. We can throw up his Medal of Honor certificate. His son, Teddy Jr., as a general, would earn the Medal of Honor in World War II.
That story in itself is pretty
impressive. We'll do that. We'll do that whole story next time. Why that's interesting, and we'll throw out the trivia question. My partner in crime knew it immediately. There have only been 2 father and son Medal of Honor pairs in history. So Teddy and Teddy Jr. were one. Anybody want to throw it into Facebook real fast? This one actually is pretty easy. We actually talked about the son last week. Anybody care? Do we have anything coming in on Facebook? Our producer's looking at me going, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm checking right now, see if we have.
There we go. Does anybody have the answer?
We do not have any answers on that, so.
Go ahead.
All right. The other pair of father-son Medal of Honor recipients is Douglas Macarthur and his father were the other 2 Medal of Honor recipient father-son combination.
Very, very interesting. I don't know if you found the copy of the book or if we can zoom in on the book. We are thrilled to have a good friend of ours. Actually, back when we started a radio show that spun off of Kilroy's Conversation, Brian Fleming was one of our very first guests. Our first guest was Marine J.J. Selving.
Yep.
And
Brian was on my show.
We Need Resistance.
When Kilroy's first launched, if you remember,
Sorry
Brian, many years ago now.
Oh.
I don't remember the exact, but we've got Brian. Brian's a great friend of mine, golfing buddy. Spent the weekend with him out in San Antonio.
Oh, was he down there too?
He was down there too.
Okay, before you guys go too far, I need to know, because I could not remember it to do it on the air as we were, and I don't know if you saw the show, Brian, but it was absolutely hysterical. We could see Andrew, but we could not hear him.
Which is a rarity.
And it was funny because he's wandering around like a, typical on the Riverwalk, drunken sailor, or drunken airman, actually, down there. San Antonio is the home of Kelly and Lackland is where they train.
Kelly's no longer there. Well, it is.
It isn't.
No, it's
they shut that base.
They shut down. There's Kelly Airfield. One of our defense contractors has.
Okay.
The
anyway,
field.
all of the recruits are there, so when they get Liberty, or whatever the Air Force calls it, they would
in between
descend
tea time.
upon the
They call it the
Riverwalk.
19th hole.
They descend upon the Riverwalk. But you guys were down there as part of what golf organization? There we go, the Resilience Booklet.
North Texas Warrior Golf. We were down there for a golf retreat, and it was, to put it mildly, unbelievable. I mean,
Did you guys get to meet George Strait?
We did not get to meet George, King George, but
Complete failure.
you want to what? We'll talk in it briefly, and then we can go into Brian. I'm sure Brian will share stuff. North Texas Warrior Golf Association, both Brian and I are members of it. It was a unbelievable. We had, 31 Warriors down there?
Probably.
Yeah.
There were quite a few of us.
Yeah, there was 31 of us down there. What they do is they use golf as a means to reconnect with one another, and kind of the greatest part of military service is the camaraderie amongst other service members, in my opinion. I think if you were to talk, and it allows you to reconnect with others, whether you served with them, didn't serve with them. You interact in that same manner, and every night when we were down there, we had these giant fire pits that it was just a unbelievable bonding experience for all of us. We've all become really good friends, really close, and just kind of sharing stories, typical of what soldiers do. The most important thing is rank is not affected. No matter whether you're a colonel to a PFC, we're all equal there, and we all just kind of shared stories, talked a lot of trash, which, always happens, especially inter-service, because we're a mixture of every branch was represented there this weekend for sure. It was outstanding, and of course, everyone laughs at the way some of us play golf. We've got some outstanding golfers, and we've got me. So,
I was gonna say me, but yeah.
So the spectrum is wide.
So I always like to introduce Brian by asking him to give us the name of his website and then to tell that story.
Yes.
All right, well, my website is called blownupguy.com, and I'll have you know
He's not kidding.
This is my third cup of coffee this morning, and I listened to Stevie Ray Vaughan on the entire drive here. So I'm feeling good for you today.
I love it, man. That's how you get fired up for the show.
That's right. No, yeah, so I don't look blown up at this point, but I sort of did it by accident. It wasn't by accident, but it wasn't genius. If it was, I didn't know it was. So I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2006. I was a team leader in an infantry platoon, and while I was there, I was inside of two vehicles that got blown up and totally destroyed. The first was April 18th of 06. It was a double stack of anti-tank mines that were buried in the road. Vehicle ran it over. I walked away unharmed, drug one of the guys out, 2 guys injured, both returned to duty a month later. A couple months later, on July 24th, I was in the front passenger seat. I was a truck commander of the lead vehicle of about a 15-vehicle convoy going through Kandahar, about 2 miles away from Kandahar Airfield, which was our destination. And a white minivan got in front of us and slowed down. So my driver went to pass him on the left, so he was within arm's reach of me. And right as we got right up next to him, the whole thing went up, and it was a suicide bomber driving that minivan. And he blew himself and his van into about 1 million pieces that day. He was the only one who died that day, So that's why my Purple Heart license plate says "Nice try," because that's just my my back to him.
Gotta love that.
But
you gotta love veterans with a real warped sense of humor.
yeah, the more trauma you have, the darker your sense of humor gets, and you'll have two responses: hilarity from people like us, and offense from other people who just don't get it. You got to be okay with that. But what happened? The website. While I was at Brooke Army Medical Center for 14 months in San Antonio, recovering, I met a Vietnam vet, a guy named Dave Reaver, who'd been horribly burned in Vietnam, and he became an author and speaker afterwards, and he'd been doing it for like 35 years at that point. And we hit it off. We just happened to cross paths, and he said, I'll show you how to do something with this. Well, as I got out speaking, people kept telling me, go tell your story, and I realized that even though people didn't go through what I went through, they had their own battles they were fighting. Mm-hmm. And they would go, man, if he learned this and this through it, that applies to my life. And so here's the thing with the website, though. They would always say, oh, what's your name? You're that guy who got blown up, right? And I looked blasted. Like, I had 2nd-degree facial burns and 3rd degree on both my hands. So I thought, they can't remember my name, but they always, and there's tens of thousands of guys like me that got blown up, by the way. I'm just the one who thought it'd be funny to have blownupguy.com, because I thought, how can they remember me in case someone needs help and they're trying to remember my name and reach out? I thought, well, they always say, hey, you're that guy who got blown up. Obviously not the only one, but I thought, guy who got blown up. Who's that guy who got blown up? Blownupguy.com. Yeah, so I searched it online, and I knew it wouldn't be available. There's no way. And it was $9, and I snatched it. It was the best marketing thing I ever did, and I didn't even know it.
Hey, now, I got to ask this question right quick because we do the Arlie Ermy Memorial Golf Classic, and I pulled up the website, and I was doing some stuff on we bought all of ours through GoDaddy, another shameless plug for one of our vendors. Have you looked at what your website is worth, what that handle is worth?
I have no idea.
Because I found out that gunnygolf.com is worth $1,200.
I'm hoping you're going to tell me my handle is worth about $1 billion, like that guy who won the lotto in Michigan last night.
Oh, did somebody win the lotto in Michigan? I want to know about the lotto in Texas.
Obviously, I didn't win it because I'm here this morning.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I didn't check my numbers. Otherwise, I said, okay, you guys have got the show. No, that's so I've met Brian. I've read Redeployed, which he has a copy of in front of him. The book this month, and we're going to have Brian back in 2 weeks to talk about resilience.
So, Brian, give us a little, if you will, teaser
the resilience book
about resilient. What is that? What is the focus of the topic? Can we get just a little tease?
To me, it's just really your ability to be able to put up with stuff. I never intended on speaking or writing on resilience. It was sort of like I did things, but it sort of chose me. And I just realized after going through my own pain, other people were fighting their own battles, and that I had learned things through my pain that even though our battles were different, what I learned actually applied to their lives and could help them. And so that became more of like, as I realized, different things that different people did throughout history, and other wounded warriors down at the medical center, the guys who made it and moved on in life productively versus the ones who didn't, I realized that I had some things in common with some of those other guys and ladies who were injured. And then I just, like the resilience booklet, that was like my own personal study of what were like some common things that all the world's most resilient people had in common that allowed them throughout history, throughout the military, and that I had in my life, because for the longest time, people saw I got past my injury, and they'd say, how'd you do it? What was like the one thing? Well, I didn't know. Like if you ask Tiger Woods, how do you golf so good? He doesn't know. He just does it. Michael Jordan, how are you so good at basketball? Like you don't always know. You just sort of do it. Well, I felt like I was leaving people disappointed. Not that I care what they think, but like I was leaving them at a loss.
Right.
Like I didn't give them anything that could help them, except inspiration that maybe I can make it too, which that's valuable. But I like giving people strategy and tactics, tangible things you can apply right now to get a desired result. That's the kind of guy I am.
And we're pretty much up against the hour. And this is really intended to be a tease for our February 6th show. Brian will probably spend at least a half hour discussing the book, discussing some of the how-tos. This will probably be one of our most significant shows that we put on.
No question about it. I mean, like I said, I personally, I look at it as a pleasure. I mean, Brian is not only a friend, but, I've spent countless amounts of times with Brian in all kinds of capacities. And what he's saying really resonates to so many, it's not just military service. It's any challenge that's in front of you can be overcome, through various different techniques. And I love how you phrased what you did with the fact that we all take a different journey,
right,
but the same tools can be used throughout that journey
absolutely,
to accomplish your end goal. And that is wonderful. So we are looking forward to our February 6th show with Brian to talk about his book, his story, perhaps maybe stories of others that have inspired you to give you that resilience,
Absolutely.
And how that affected not only your life, but some of the words within inside your book. It's great stuff. Well, like, Chuck, you said, we are running up on the end of the show today. Great show. We say this after every show. Man, that was so much fun. As we've been on here on air, it just gets stronger and more fun every week. While the tangents are never intended, they're always a fun part of the show because we go into so many different things. And, of course,
I drive my wife crazy with tangents.
But you know what? That's kind of how the military works. I mean, you think about it. What was what Eisenhower said all the time, especially before D-Day? The first casualty of war is the plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
the plan goes right out the window.
Right out the window at the first shot. And, of course, we had a bunch of little things that, as we went on there, that's what makes it fun and exciting. I mean, we didn't get to hit on all of our presidents, which we will probably next week, because there's so much fun out there.
List. Yeah.
But I do got, Brian, you got one thing to add?
One quick thing. If anybody watching right now wants a free copy of the Resilience booklet, I've got a digital copy you can go download. If you go to free R booklet, free letter R as in resilience, booklet, freerbooklet.com, you can download immediately a free PDF digital version of that. And
Nice.
It's about 52 pages. You can read it in an afternoon, just, in like 40 minutes or 106 minutes if you're me. And but you can get a little taste of
Are there more pictures and words? Because I definitely need that.
No, it's simple, but it's about there are about 100 things in there you can apply to your life right now to win the battle you're facing. So go get that free copy of it. It's my gift to you guys at freerbooklet.com.
That's why we love you, Brian. You are a giver. And I'm not just saying because of the book. I mean, in general, again, awesome. We will be downloading that and probably use some of the tidbits maybe next week's show.
Yeah,
we
will continue to tease.
Mm-hmm.
We will finish our list about presidents who served and talk about them, share some stories. And like I said, February 6th, Brian will be back. I'm really looking forward to that show. I got to be on the Lisa Kay and Taylor show talking about a project I'm working on for our Gold Star families. But it was interesting because Lisa Kay is the one who does here in Frisco, although it's not limited to Frisco veterans. She does in November a appreciation lunch that is open and free for all veterans. We're going to push that a lot this year. But lo and behold, it was Brian Fleming who spoke at that, and it was amazing to watch. It was almost entirely civilians. It was really weird. I'm sure part of it was COVID. There weren't that many veterans in the room, relatively speaking. How many people were taking notes of your comments? Really, really cool.
All righty. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up today's show.
From Venture X Studios in Frisco, Texas.
Thank you to the JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network.
Yep.
For us in the air. We will see you all next week.
Same bat time,
same bat channel. So, see, that's the beauty.
It's the silliness.
The beauty of age and knowing what that means.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, with that being
kids
said,
can Google.
I'm going to give a big old hoorah and
Hoorah!
out to our listeners, and we will see you all next week right here where we will continue. And if you've got presidential military history knowledge, email us, Facebook us with questions. But don't forget, our still challenges out there. We're looking for military athletes.
Ooh, yes, that will be another February show.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about the great military athletes
and their contribution, because there's a lot of them out there, a lot of shockers and surprisers that people just don't know about.
People just are not aware of. Yeah, that'll be a fun show to put together.
We will see you all then. With that,
we're out.
We're out. Hoorah.
Brian, thanks for coming by, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.